In the small, sun-drenched town of Willow Springs, nestled somewhere between the rolling fields of Iowa and the sleepy embrace of the Mississippi River, 12-year-old Aaliyah Bennett sat hunched over her notebook. Her fingers trembled slightly as she read the list of performers taped on the bulletin board of Willow Springs Middle School. There it was, her name, printed in bold letters. Aaliyah Bennett. Vocal solo. The butterflies that had been quietly resting in her stomach suddenly erupted into full flight. Aaliyah loved to sing. It was the one thing that made her feel truly alive. But lately, she wasn't sure if her voice, or even she herself, was something the world wanted to hear. For the past few weeks, cruel whispers had trailed her down the hallways. "Trying to be Beyoncé, huh?" sneered Emily Hargrove one afternoon, flanked by a posse of girls who giggled on cue. "She'll probably sound like a dying cat," another jeered. It wasn't just the words, it was the way they looked at her, as if she didn't belong. Aaliyah was one of only a handful of black students in the entire school, and even though the teachers preached about diversity and acceptance, Aaliyah could feel the invisible walls every day. She folded her notebook shut, trying to silence the doubts that filled her mind louder than any melody she could sing. Maybe it would be better to just tell Mrs. Watkins, the music teacher, that she couldn't do it, say she was sick, say she lost her voice. Anything. "Aaliyah!" a voice called out. She turned to see her best friend, Noah Martinez, jogging toward her, his backpack half zipped and a grin on his face. His curly hair bounced with every step. "You saw the list. You're in," he said, beaming. "That's amazing." Aaliyah forced a smile, but it barely touched her eyes. Noah frowned. "Hey, what's wrong?" Aaliyah hesitated. The words stuck in her throat. She hated showing weakness. But Noah wasn't like the others. He had always been there, from second grade art projects to fifth grade science fairs. Maybe she could trust him. "I don't know if I can do it," she whispered. Noah's brows knitted together. "Are you kidding? You have the best voice in the whole school." Aaliyah shook her head. "What if they laugh at me? What if they think I'm just trying to be something I'm not?" Noah's face grew serious. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Ali, you're not trying to be something. You are something. Something incredible. Don't let a bunch of jerks tell you otherwise." A lump rose in Aaliyah's throat. She nodded, but doubt still gnawed at the edges of her heart. The concert was only a week away, and the thought of standing on that stage alone made her knees weak. Would her voice be enough to drown out the laughter? Would her heart be strong enough to take the first step? Each afternoon that week, Aaliyah stayed late in the choir room, rehearsing long after the others had left. She sat at the edge of the slightly battered piano, humming scales, letting the notes roll off her tongue like drops of water. Mrs. Watkins, a kind woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, listened quietly from her desk, occasionally tapping a pencil against a sheet of music. "You're getting stronger every day, Mrs." Watkins said after one particularly moving rendition of Rise Up by Andra Day. Aaliyah shrugged. "It doesn't matter if they don't listen." Mrs. Watkins set down her pencil and walked over. She knelt until her eyes were level with Aaliyah's. "They will listen, Aaliyah. Trust me. When you sing from your soul, even the hardest hearts soften. People can't help it." Aaliyah looked away, blinking hard. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But every time she thought about the concert, imagined the rows of parents, students, teachers, the blinding lights, the sea of judgmental faces, her chest tightened painfully. On Thursday, while practicing in the empty gymnasium where the concert would be held, she heard the familiar sound of giggles behind her. She turned around to see Emily and her friends leaning against the bleachers, smirking. "Warming up for the big fail," Emily cooed, mockingly. Aaliyah felt heat rise to her cheeks. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She simply gathered her things and fled, their laughter chasing her down the hall like a swarm of bees. She didn't stop running until she was outside, sitting against the big oak tree behind the school. The late autumn wind bit at her cheeks, but she didn't care. She buried her face in her knees, trying to hold back the tears. "Why am I even trying?" she whispered into the fabric of her jeans. "No one wants to hear me." But deep inside, a small ember of defiance still flickered. Aaliyah thought about her grandmother, who used to tell her, "Baby girl, your voice is your gift. Don't you dare hide it for anyone." Maybe she could do it. Maybe somehow she could show them all. Or maybe she would crash and burn in front of the entire town. Saturday night would decide everything. Saturday evening arrived with a crisp chill in the air, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and bonfire smoke. The entire town seemed to gather inside Willow Springs Middle School's gymnasium, the bleachers packed with families, teachers, and students buzzing with excitement. The hum of chatter was almost deafening. Backstage, Aaliyah paced nervously. Her palms were clammy, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She clutched the microphone like a lifeline, staring at the long list of performers ahead of her. Her turn was near. She caught sight of Emily and her friends lounging near the side of the stage, snickering and whispering. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. She considered running again, slipping out through the back door and disappearing into the night. But then Noah appeared by her side, holding out a bottle of water and offering a steady, reassuring smile. "You've got this, Ali," he said simply. His words settled over her like a warm blanket. She straightened her shoulders, trying to anchor herself to the belief that maybe, just maybe, her voice could rise above everything else. The host, Mr. Callahan, a booming-voiced history teacher, stepped up to the microphone to announce the next act. "And now, please welcome to the stage one of our own rising stars, Miss Aaliyah Bennett." The applause was polite but scattered, and Aaliyah could feel the weight of every eye on her as she stepped out into the spotlight. The gymnasium seemed to stretch endlessly before her. Rows and rows of faces, some expectant, some skeptical, some indifferent. The piano intro began, simple, soft chords filling the air. Aaliyah closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and let go. The first notes slipped from her lips, shaky at first, but gaining strength with every word. The song she chose wasn't a flashy pop hit or a Broadway ballad. It was an old spiritual her grandmother used to hum while cleaning the house. "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." A song rooted deep in the soil of her ancestors. As Aaliyah sang, something changed in the room. The restless shifting, the whispering. Everything fell silent. Her voice, clear and rich, filled every corner of the gym. It was not loud or forced. It was powerful because it was real, honest, raw. Parents put down their phones. Students leaned forward. Even the teachers seemed to forget their duties for a moment and simply listened. When Aaliyah opened her eyes, she saw Noah smiling broadly from the wings, giving her a silent thumbs up. She saw Mrs. Watkins with tears brimming in her eyes, and she saw Emily, frozen mid-giggle, mouth slightly open in disbelief. Aaliyah poured her heart into every note. She thought about all the times she had felt small, all the moments she had doubted herself, all the cruel laughter she had endured, and she let it fuel her. By the time she hit the final chorus, her voice soared, weaving a tapestry of sound that wrapped around every soul in that gym. When the last note faded into silence, there was a beat of stunned stillness. And then, An explosion of applause. It wasn't polite this time. It was thunderous. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, whistling. Aaliyah stood there, blinking in disbelief, her heart thundering in her chest. They weren't laughing. They were cheering. They were cheering for her. Backstage, chaos erupted. Teachers hugged each other. Students chatted excitedly. Mrs. Watkins rushed up, enveloping Aaliyah in a tight hug. "You were magnificent, darling," she cried. Even Principal Hartman, a usually stoic man with a reputation for sternness, approached her with a broad smile. "You made us all proud tonight, Aaliyah," he said warmly. Noah was practically vibrating with excitement. He grabbed her hand and twirled her around. "See? I told you. You owned it." Aaliyah laughed, a pure, bubbling sound she hadn't made in weeks. And then something unexpected happened. Emily Hargrove, the same girl who had tormented her for months, walked up hesitantly, clutching the strap of her sequin-covered purse. For a second, Aaliyah braced herself for another insult. But instead, Emily looked down at her shoes and mumbled, "You were really good. I didn't know you could sing like that." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was something. Aaliyah simply nodded. She didn't need Emily's approval. Not anymore. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Strangers came up to her, patting her shoulder, praising her courage and her voice. Parents asked for pictures. Younger kids gazed at her with wide, admiring eyes. She had stepped onto that stage terrified and uncertain. She walked off a hero. By Monday morning, the buzz had spread beyond the walls of the school. Videos of Aaliyah's performance had made their way onto social media. Parents had posted clips, local businesses had shared them, and before long, the mayor himself had posted a congratulatory message on the town's community page. "Talent like this reminds us all why Willow Springs is such a special place," the post read. At school, things were different. Teachers smiled wider. Students who had barely noticed her before now waved and called out her name in the halls. Even the cafeteria felt less intimidating. Aaliyah found herself sitting at a table surrounded by new friends. Kids who wanted to hear her sing, who wanted to know her story. It was overwhelming but beautiful. One afternoon, Mrs. Watkins called her into the music room with exciting news. "The Willow Springs Autumn Festival is next month," she said, practically vibrating with excitement. "They've asked if you would perform." Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. "Me? At the festival?" Mrs. Watkins nodded. "They want you to be the opening act." Aaliyah stared at her, disbelief and pride warring in her chest. The Autumn Festival was the biggest event of the year. Thousands of people from surrounding towns came to Willow Springs for it. Performing there would be bigger than anything she had ever dreamed. Bigger and scarier. But this time, instead of fear locking her throat, she felt something else rise inside her. Determination. Preparations for the festival became the new center of Aaliyah's life. She worked with Mrs. Watkins on her set list, choosing songs that reflected who she was. Songs of hope, struggle, and triumph. Meanwhile, Noah helped spread the word. He designed posters and even convinced his older brother, who worked at a local print shop, to make t-shirts that read, "I believe in Aaliyah." When she saw the first one, Aaliyah laughed so hard she nearly cried. But deep down, it touched her more than she could say. As the days ticked by, her nerves returned, but they were different now. They weren't the crippling doubts of before. They were the excited jitters of someone about to step into something bigger than themselves. The night before the festival, Aaliyah stood in her room, practicing in front of the mirror. She wore her best jeans, a new blouse her mom had bought her, and a silver necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. She stared at her reflection, a girl with warm brown skin, determined eyes, and a voice that could shake the world. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. And for the first time, she truly believed it. The morning of the festival dawned bright and cool. The streets of Willow Springs were alive with colour. Banners fluttered, booths lined the sidewalks, and the scent of fried dough and kettle corn filled the air. The stage was set up in the town square, a grand platform surrounded by hundreds of folding chairs and a grassy hill where families were already laying out picnic blankets. Aaliyah stood backstage, peeking out at the growing crowd. Her stomach did a little flip. "Just remember," Noah said, handing her a bottle of water. "They're all here to hear you." Mrs. Watkins adjusted Aaliyah's microphone and gave her a thumbs up. The announcer's voice boomed across the loudspeakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the shining voice of Willow Springs, Miss Aaliyah Bennett." The crowd erupted into cheers. Aaliyah walked out onto the stage, the sunlight warm on her face. The town spread out before her like a sea of possibility. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and sang. Her voice floated across the square, weaving through the trees, lifting into the blue sky. It carried her fears, her hopes, her dreams, everything she was, and the town of Willow Springs listened, really listened. As the final notes of her song faded, a hush fell over the crowd. It lasted a heartbeat longer than she expected. And then, an explosion of applause. People leapt to their feet, children waved handmade signs. Elderly couples clapped and cheered. Parents lifted toddlers onto their shoulders to see her better. Aaliyah stood there, overwhelmed by the love washing over her. She spotted her mother in the front row, tears streaming down her cheeks, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. She saw Noah, shouting her name at the top of his lungs, wearing a t-shirt with her face on it. And she even saw Emily, clapping hesitantly but genuinely. The mayor himself climbed on stage, handing her a bouquet of sunflowers and proclaiming that from now on, the opening act at the Autumn Festival would always feature a student from Willow Springs, starting with Aaliyah. She had given her town more than a concert. She had given them hope. That night, Aaliyah sat on the roof of her house, gazing up at the stars. The distant sounds of the festival still drifted through the air. The laughter, the music, the magic. Her heart felt full in a way she hadn't known was possible. She had been afraid. She had been doubted, teased, laughed at. But she hadn't given up. She had faced the darkness inside herself and outside, and she had sung through it. And now, as she gazed at the vast, glittering sky, she knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet promise took root. No matter where life took her, big stages, small rooms, crowded cities, or sleepy towns, she would never again be afraid to raise her voice, because she had learned something they could never take away. Her voice mattered, and it was beautiful.